Australia has a problem. It's serious and it's growing, and there's no solution in sight. What problem is that, you ask through your computer screen? Surely you must know. It's been all over the news for years now. Well, here it is, so don't say you weren't warned. First, you have to know that what we are talking about has nothing at all to do with race or ethnicity, because discussing that issue makes us all ray-ray. You don't want to be ray-ray now, do you? The issue we are discussing is, of course, the growing instance of youth and teenager violence. And it's only youths or teenagers, nothing else at all, can distinguish these groups committing these crimes. If you disagree, then you're obviously a ray-ray white supreme pizza. Take this story published in the Herald Sun in March of this year, and I quote, "Police arrested 20 people over the course of the Moomba weekend, but declared themselves happy with how people behaved. Brawling youths repeatedly clashed in the city at the weekend as violence again marred Moomba. Police arrested 5 people and squirted capsicum spray in an effort to quell the violence. Hundreds of police, brawling youths, capsicum spray, vulgar profanities and weapons searches all were evident as trouble flared in Melbourne's CBD on Saturday night. Tourists were forced to cower in fear as police used capsicum spray to quell clashing youths. It took police 4 hours to disperse the youths and end the chaos. Young families were visibly horrified when they saw 2 youths with blood pouring from head wounds following one of the brawls." End quote. Youths really need to settle down. Back in the day, young people worked hard and picked themselves up by the bootstraps. Kids these days, honestly, all so lazy and out of control. Just ask any boomer. The problem of youth crime is long term, and we need to look at it in depth in order to understand it fully. From the same story in the Herald Sun, and I quote, "Groups of youths from Melbourne's southeast and western suburbs were responsible for some of the trouble which did occur. Police were tracking the youths as they caught public transport into the CBD and swooped on them as soon as violence flared up." End quote. It's almost like the police profiled these youths in some way. Not sure what characteristics they were looking for, other than the fact that they are youthful, of course. Just remember, guys, as we analyse this issue, we will see there are many possible causes, but race or ethnicity are not any of them. There will be no wrongthink in this video. How's it going, everyone? I promise you the content will resume very shortly. I just wanted to take a brief moment to tell you about some exciting news and let you know about Rational Rise TV. RRTV is a new platform that allows independent creators to post their content and for you, the viewer, to gain additional benefits for your generous support. You can choose how much you want to donate to your favourite creator, and not only does the majority of your donation go directly to them, but you gain access to all Rational Rise TV premium content. How good is that? This is the very best way for you to support my work and the work of many independent creators, so please help us escape the chains of Silicon Valley once and for all with RRTV. We are Christian Pirates. Arr. Watch your screen right now. In the video displayed, you can clearly see 2 groups of youths coming together in an alleged organised brawl. Obviously, there is nothing that could distinguish these youths from other youths, so stop trying to make assumptions that they are anything but youths. Thankfully, the police were all over these youths before the youths started anything. They totally weren't off trying to swindle Australian drivers out of their hard-earned money. On March 5th, Channel 9 News reported the following, and I quote, "A man has been seriously injured after a brutal assault by a group of teenagers at Batman Park in Melbourne. Video shows Tristan Hurt being savagely attacked by the gang in the early hours of Sunday morning. While on the ground, Mr. Hurt is kicked in the head. Witness Wade Mackay said, "They smacked him straight in the head. He fell directly back and his head bounced off the ground." Police investigating the incident charged an 18-year-old with possessing a drug of dependence, while 2 other teens were also arrested, but later released. End quote. Obviously, the police are baffled as to who the attackers could possibly be, hence they haven't made any meaningful arrests. With no further characteristics or descriptions for the police to go on, these youths will likely walk free. Then there's this story from December of 2018, last year, about the growing issue with youth violence from the ABC, and I quote, "Police have increased patrols at a Bayside beach after a group of youths allegedly stole mobile phones and purses from the bags of swimmers before smashing a bottle over the head of a 19-year-old man. Extra officers were deployed to Chelsea Beach in Melbourne's southeast on Friday night after a group of youths allegedly assaulted 5 men, one with a glass bottle and others with a yellow plastic cricket bat, about 9:30 p.m. on Thursday. Police said the group, whose members were described as being of youthful appearance and aged in their late teens and early 20s, approached the unattended belongings of swimmers on the beach." End quote. This youthful crime has obviously been going on for some time now, and police are doing very little about it. More patrols might help, but youths are a clever lot and may just go to a different beach. Here is a news story from Channel 9, again from March of this year, regarding a cultural festival for no culture in particular. Trigger warning, this may be a little disturbing.
First a shove and then a right hook. A vile attack on a police officer trying to break up a fight between 18-year-old girls. Police were called to Wyatt Park at Litecoin at 7 o'clock last night, an hour after the annual Africulture Festival had finished, when groups of people began to brawl. The police helicopter and riot squad were called in for backup and forced to use capsicum spray.
It happened all very quickly, and all I can say is what could possibly go wrong if you punch a cop in the face.
Indeed, but it continues.
From our understanding, it was just a feud between families that just came to met at the festival.
Most people left when police arrived, but not the 2 18-year-olds who allegedly lashed out.
Obviously, this is just a case of kids being kids. Who hasn't felt the need to punch a police officer in the face once or twice in their life? Nothing at all could have predicted this, and you all know it. Sure, some of you bigots will say it's African crime that's the issue, but you need to listen to Waleed Ali. He totally never lies about anything.
According to Victoria's Crime Statistics Agency, crime has actually dropped about 9% in the last year in Victoria. And Sudanese-born Victorians make up 0.1% of the population and account for just 1% of all crimes committed last year.
Hear that, bigots? They are overrepresented, but other non-violent crimes are going down, so there. Don't even think about blaming anyone but youths and teens. Especially blame Australians though, because Waleed said so. Don't talk about how in June a group of youths with no other distinguishing traits robbed $15,000 worth of electronics from JB Hi-Fi. Nor should you talk about the recent wave of teens invading people's homes and stealing their cars. Certainly don't talk about how in April a gang of teens stormed an Optus store to steal mobile phones and, while trying to flee, broke an 81-year-old man's hip. Most importantly, if you think there is any other way to describe these criminals other than teens or youths, you need to check your white privilege. They are teens and youths, nothing else. If you say otherwise, you might just be turning into a white supreme pizza, and that's the worst thing any bigot could possibly be. What's obvious from this recent burst of youth crime is that we just haven't spent enough money on education. We should demand the government steal even more of taxpayers' money in order to educate these youths on the way to behave in society. If that doesn't work, then the process of elimination dictates that the real problem is obviously white privilege. We should do all we can to rectify this through even more punitive taxation and hate speech laws. But only for those of European ancestry, of course. We need to stop the worst kind of people from saying things like this, from news.com, and I quote, Pauline Hanson has called for African gang members to be deported following the latest incident of violence in Melbourne at the weekend. A gang of up to 40 youths of African appearance stormed the family-friendly festival Somersault in Melbourne's west on Saturday night, kicking and punching some festival goers and stealing wallets, bags and phones. A teenager was also hospitalised after being confronted by members of the gang outside the neighbouring Caroline Springs police station. It is the latest in a string of gang crime allegedly committed by African youths in Melbourne, and Ms. Hanson said she had a simple solution to curb it. She said, quote, I've got the best solution to this, round them up and get them out. End quotes. We cannot have people expressing such hate speech. It's not the fault of youths that society oppresses them with free housing and welfare. It's not their fault we let them into our developed, first world, safe and prosperous nation. It's our fault. We haven't been nice and accommodating enough. We need to do more to combat the Ray white supreme pizzas. Pauline Hanson is just a bigoted, privileged boomer who hasn't had to deal with the chronically underfunded education system. She is wrong, and if she just called for greater education spending, we'd solve all of our problems. We'd even solve issues like this story reported by Melbourne's Herald Sun, and I quote, a disqualified driver who claimed he fled the scene of a fiery crash with a motorcyclist because he had to get home to his cats now wants a lesser jail term, saying the rider would have died whether he stayed or not. Santino Buncal, 30, pleaded with the Court of Appeal that his 22-month minimum sentence for failing to stop and help crash victim Ashley Gayson was manifestly excessive. The Sudanese refugee was not found at fault in the crash, which saw Mr. Gayson, 21, become engulfed in flames and die on the Nepean Highway at Brighton in July 2017. But he did plead guilty to failing to render assistance after an accident in which a person was killed, disqualified driving and using an unregistered vehicle. End quote. Such gallant logic from an obvious legal genius. Take that, English common law. Your days of white supreme pizzarism are finished. Then again, unlike youthful man Yak Dut, Santino didn't use the Ali G defense. This is the ultimate legal strategy, so maybe he isn't a genius after all. From Melbourne's Herald Sun, and I quote, a young cop basher who bragged he could get away with anything because he's black has been freed from prison despite admitting a string of new crimes. Yak Dut, 22, bashed two policewomen, then threatened to hunt them down and shoot them with their guns after he was arrested. He taunted police, telling them, I will get away with anything because I'm black. He spent 18 months on remand in custody and was last month given a get out of jail card after a county court judge ruled he had spent enough time in prison. Judge Wendy Wilmoth said the community would be better served by Dut's rehabilitation and ordered he undergo a 2-year community corrections order with strict conditions. But on his release from custody, he was immediately arrested and locked up again on an outstanding warrant. End quote. Such a fine, upstanding citizen and an obviously productive member of society. It all makes sense. Trust me. Wookiees live on Endor. Wookiees have always lived on Endor. At this point, you might be tempted into considering wrongthink as the answer, and that is understandable, but don't let the pool of evidence and reasonable arguments drag you down. All people are equal. Everyone is the same. There are no differences at all between the races because race doesn't exist. Only Rays say race is real. Especially don't say things like these two bigots.
in 2 years' time,
Yeah.
to use the term youths will be a hate crime.
You reckon?
Yes, in the same way that, like,
What are they going to use then?
well, in the same way that, like, we're not allowed
Yeah.
to say terrorist anymore, we have to say violent extremists.
Yes.
And now
yes,
the
yes.
left are trying to redefine what violent extremism is about.
Yeah.
They're going to do the same thing with youth. We're going to have to use another term, and then everybody's going to understand that term means what we're talking about.
Well, I have a more positive approach to it. I think that in 2 years, people are going to be far more woken up on this issue, and they're just going to say, stuff ya, we'll say what we want.
Yeah.
I think that's probably. I think in 2020, I've said this before, my prediction is that in 2020, we are all going to wake up because God likes dad jokes. We're going to start seeing the truth.
What on earth are they talking about? This is confusing. Who let these far-right, Ray white supreme pizzas talk? Every Monday night at around 9:15 PM on Matty Rose Live. We need to censor them, because when we censor people, that proves us right. Youth crime is a big problem, and it's only youths that are committing it. There may be no real solution, and kicking them out of the country is obviously not the answer. So don't even suggest it, you bigots. We have to think of their feelings after all. That means ignoring the pain of the victims. Some crazy Ray-Rays and white supreme pizzas want to claim it's likely due to race and genetics. They are wrong, and you should not even think of repeating that claim, no matter how much evidence there is to back it up. Facts are Ray-Ray too. We cannot sit by while it's still possible to throw money at this problem. Someone needs to think of the youths and the teens. If throwing money at the problem doesn't solve it, the only strategy left is to stick our heads in the sand and silence anyone talking about it, because at least if we do that, there's a chance it might one day go away. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Don't share it around, because that would be Ray-Ray, and I'll see ya when you take your hood off.